Let's talk about imagery in professional wrestling because after this past weekend at AEW All Out, there are specific clips that I would like to talk about, and I will stand my ground because it needs to be talked about. That kind of imagery should not be in professional wrestling, and that is not professional wrestling. I will say it again. That is not professional wrestling. Professional wrestling is not to the point where you go over someone else's human rights to live, meaning Moxley with that bag over Danielson's head and suffocating him. It does not mean that you can take a syringe, a needle, and put it into someone's mouth and have a simulation of that you have put them to sleep or numb them or whatever the case may be, whatever you are insinuating, Hangman Adam Page, to Swerve, and then hit him over the head, clear shot, headshot over the head, when we know what CTE does to a human brain. There is a reason why the NFL tries to make sure that the helmets are really well protected for every person that plays football. But for some reason, it's okay in professional wrestling nowadays to just forget about CTE, forget about what happened in the past, and forget about all the knowledge just to feed the bloodthirsty fans that want to go along with it. And in the same breath, those fans will say that they're fans of professional wrestling. They love professional wrestling. Professional wrestling is awesome. Professional wrestling saved their life. But you would cheer the fact that someone could have died from suffocation, and if anything went wrong with that needle, we would not have Swerve. I'm just saying. If anything went wrong with that needle spot, bad things could have happened during AEW All Out. But everybody wants to celebrate it. Everybody wants to silence those that will stick their flag in the ground and be like, this is not the alternative we asked for in 2019. It is not. But there are accounts on Twitter that will make you believe that it is. And that's all thanks to Tony Khan and the dirt sheets and what's popular. And it's very popular to become a sheep. It is not popular to become a leader and speak on things that are issue related and need to be addressed and bring up awareness for it. Most people on the internet think that accounts with no picture, accounts with a profile picture that is anime, that is a wrestler, that is no picture. You guys really think they have power over your lives and power over what you like and don't like and power over what you can say and don't say? We have the First Amendment right for a reason, and you can say what you want to say. Just be aware of how you say it and how you construct it. But you can definitely voice your opinion if you felt that the clips that were shown on Twitter, a site that can be accessed by anybody, because you could lie about your age and you could be underage and you could be seeing that kind of imagery, a site that could be accessed by anybody, and they're telling you to be quiet because you felt that it was disgusting, horrendous, and is not a place in professional wrestling. So I will, for this podcast, say that those clips that we saw, Daniel Bryan getting suffocated by John Moxley, the needle spot, the chair spot, are not needed in professional wrestling, and that is not wrestling. Wrestling is a competition, and I understand that sometimes feuds end up becoming blood feuds. I totally understand that. But AEW doesn't know how to tell a blood feud. The only good blood feud right now currently is Drew McIntyre versus CM Punk. And look how long that took to develop. And look how long we are still invested in this story. Other people might have turned away from it, but that's them. But for the majority, we are still invested in a Drew McIntyre versus CM Punk. For some reason, Hangman versus Swerve got hot-shotted so much to where it's a blood feud. But there are certain story beats that are missing, but all of a sudden it's a blood feud and it's like regarded as one of the best stories in AEW, and that's not true. It is not, because there are certain story beats that are missing. Why is Hangman Adam Page so furious with Swerve? And why is Swerve so furious with Hangman Adam Page when all of a sudden it was just like both of them cost each other the title shot, and both of them went into each other's house. One just happened to burn it down and only got 660K in ratings, and that didn't really help. The other one was Swerve going into Hangman's house and looking at his kid and suggesting that he's always watching. And those are the key moments that I truly remember. There's nothing else. So how is this a blood feud, and why was it so dark and gritty to have this cage match? And I understand that it is an unsanctioned cage match. And some people try to bring that up to me, that it's unsanctioned and anything can happen. Well, does crossing the line have to be there? Because that's crossing the line to bring out a needle, to stab a man with a needle. And I thought that it was just stabbing a man with a needle. But no, it's also injecting a man, your opponent, someone that you are supposed to make sure that they wake up to see another day. But all of a sudden just simulate the fact that you drugged him so you can deliver the final blow, which is a unprotected chair shot. Again, you are supposed to make sure that your opponent wakes up the next day, not make sure that you want to simulate you trying to kill him, because that is really crossing a boundary, not only for human rights, but for a pay-per-view. And you might call me soft and sensitive and whatever else you want to call me, but it is crossing a line. It is crossing basic human rights, and it's crossing that boundary. And it's like, why is that acceptable? Why? Why is it acceptable? If WWE did anything like that by crossing the line and want to smack the label on it being unsanctioned, lights out cage match, everybody would have gotten their pitchforks and everybody would have called up the networks, emailed the networks, harassed the networks on Twitter and be like, get WWE off of cable. Because guess what? They did the same thing in the 90s and also probably in the 2000s, then it just stopped, where parents were like, oh, this is not suitable for my kid. And now look at WWE. WWE has exploded into the great business that it is and has utilized every single avenue of social media to showcase the different aspects of their wrestlers. So if you want to see more of the high spots and flippy stuff, you look on WWE Speed, which is on Twitter, which is accessed by everybody around the world, and they're not doing anything grotesque or disgusting or horrendous to share. So you wonder why WWE has the upper hand and leverage when it comes to creating business and getting that Twitter deal, while AEW over here is like, let me do what I want. This is art. Oh my God, it's not that serious. Or this isn't for you. It is for you when it becomes access on cable television. You know what wasn't accessible for cable television? All the rest of the hardcore promotions that we had. So ECW was on public access TV. No one truly had access to public access TV, but that is the spot that they got on so that people could see ECW, and then the fandom grew. And even ECW did some horrendous stuff, and not all of them are still here. Do you see the point? Most of them are still here because they survived and they're lucky, and I want them to stay for the foreseeable future. I want them to live healthy lives. And we should have learned that we don't need any of that horrendous, disgusting, crossing the line kind of wrestling, if you want to call it wrestling, but it's not wrestling. We don't need that in 2024. We really don't. Every wrestler that's in 2024 right now should have the capabilities of knowing how to get over, knowing how to tell a story, knowing how to connect with the fans. And getting hit over the head unprotected with a chair is not getting over with the fans. Getting stabbed in the cheek with the simulation of getting drugged at the same time is not getting over with the fans. And also suffocating a man is not getting over with the fans. There are other ways to tell your story. There are other ways to connect with the fans. And if you have not figured out how to connect with the fans, then you might have to go back to the drawing board. There are other ways to connect with the fans in 2024. You do not need the extreme violence. Now, I do understand that in wrestling, violence is necessary because it is a combative sport. It is. Wrestlers are defying physics every single time that we watch them on television or whether that's on a streaming network. They are defying the odds. They are doing amazing stuff. But at the same time, don't you want them to have a restful body so that way they could wake up the next day and entertain you? But at the same time, you're like, yay, let's do more of this stuff, AEW. And then if someone gets hurt, no one cares about that wrestler anymore. You're not going to pay their bills. AEW is not going to pay their bills. They have to find some type of way to pay their medical bills, but it's all for entertainment, right? It's all for the guys or the accounts, the IWC accounts that are so selfish in the community that I think we need to get them out. But we can't really get them out because they create burner accounts, they create more accounts, they create a lot of accounts just to keep the noise up. And this is why it's hard to filter through who's being genuine, who's not being genuine, and who wants to just be an influencer for the sake of being an influencer, because it's more easier now. And I am going to get back to talking about the imagery, but this is what we have to deal with, is that the voices get louder and louder because people on the internet don't know how to mute, block, and go. And it doesn't matter how many accounts that they make. They want to make sure that what they want, which is very selfish for the whole of the wrestling community, what they want stays. And then Tony Khan just falls into this, and Tony Khan wants the same thing, because I have been saying it in my previous videos that all Tony Khan cares about is buying out the competition, buying out the wrestlers that he wants, doesn't really give a shit about the wrestlers, and playing in the sandbox. And if a wrestler gets hurt, they're on the shelf. We're not talking about them. We're not going to have them do vignettes. I totally forgot about that person. His contract ran out because he no-showed. And it's the kind of thing where it's like, why are we not holding AEW accountable for the things that they are doing? But you guys want to go so hard on holding WWE accountable for every little thing that they do. But AEW over here showcases imagery that can definitely influence a kid, especially if a kid is being bullied in school and nobody is talking to the kid, and the kid is not talking to no one, and he sees what John Moxley did, or he sees what Hangman Adam Page did, and goes and replicates that. That happened in the 90s. Why do you think WWE was like, don't try this at home? And they had to tell people that this is just fiction, that it's theater, that it's not real. But all of a sudden, AEW is totally okay. And AEW is for the sickos, and AEW is for the adults. Well, guess what? Kids have access to everything that the adults have access to. You think that parents are parenting their kids? They're not these days. So kids have access to Twitter, and kids can see this imagery. And while we do need imagery in professional wrestling and in the forms of entertainment that we watch, that is crossing the line. That is crossing someone's human right, because you don't put a bag over someone's head. You don't try to suffocate them. Whatever happened to a regular beatdown for Bryan Danielson to get him out of the BCC? Whatever happened to that? Whatever happened to just being like, bro, we're going to powerbomb you, and then we're going to kick you, and then you're going to roll out, and then you're going to be helped to the back? Why can't we just do it that way? That would have been simple. But no, John Moxley has it into his head that the suffocation of Bryan Danielson was legit and was awesome. That doesn't make awesome TV. That just has people turn it off, because the next time around, you guys are going to go from 0 to 1,000, and someone is not going to come back. So that is my concern, that someone is not going to come back. And for people to be like, it's just wrestling, this is what happened back in the day. We're not talking about what happened in the past. We're not. We're talking about current times and maybe just like 5 years ago. Using the past to try to justify what AEW did and the AEW wrestlers, to give them a pass, is completely wrong. Because the past is the past, and we learn from the past. And that is my point, that we learn from the past, we move on, we make some progress, and we make some smarter decisions. A smart decision is not showcasing and having the camera up close and personal to Jon Moxley putting the bag over Danielson's head and showing that to the world. Yes, it's a pay-per-view, but they still have to represent the network that they are on. And while we're talking about representing networks, Jon Moxley represents AEW, Bryan Danielson represents AEW, Hangman Adam Page represents AEW, and Swerve represents AEW. And then to have all of this done and showcase all of this without having a second thought, without having a second conversation to be like, would this be a good idea? Just tells me that they don't care about the spot that they have been granted to be on cable television, to be with Warner Brothers Discovery. And Tony Khan is still like, oh, well, we're still in negotiations and the small details to work out, and I still haven't put pen to paper. If I was the network, I would be embarrassed to have that on the network, even if it's a pay-per-view, even if it's unsanctioned, and that stuff just doesn't fly. That kind of imagery doesn't fly. Have you guys not realized that over the years, certain type of TV shows have decided to change certain scenes? We have no more smoking scenes in a way. We have no more extreme violence. We have no more straight out stuff that we can deem problematic because it can be problematic, but it's still an issue to talk about if it arises in real life. Sometimes in entertainment, you want your fans to escape reality, not necessarily come back into their reality and maybe be triggered or maybe not be triggered, or it just doesn't feel right and it's horrendous and it really makes them feel uncomfortable. Especially for a medium like wrestling, where everybody says, oh, wrestling saved me. Wrestling saved my life. Well, if someone looked at someone getting suffocated, I don't know if they're going to say that wrestling saved my life. Like, how does that translate to saving your life? It really doesn't. Wrestling is an escape. Wrestling should not make you feel uncomfortable to the point where a human right had that boundary crossed. You do not do that. And talking about imagery, imagery helps us with understanding our problems, understanding issues, understanding metaphors, understanding allegories, understanding a lot of things. So imagery in entertainment and art help us make sense of the world around us. So please, somebody explain to me how being suffocated by a bag is going to explain the world around us, and how getting stabbed with a needle with the indication and the simulation of getting drugged and then hit over the head by a chair, how does that help us make sense of the world? It really doesn't. There's a reason why imagery is very powerful, but these imageries cross the line in professional wrestling. Professional wrestling is supposed to make you uncomfortable, but in a good way, not in a horrendous or a disgusting way where you're going to turn off the channel and then you're going to tell your friend, hey, AEW isn't worth it. AEW is only worried about hurting others. And, you know, who knows they're going to wake up in the morning. I don't know. But their only concern about is going to hurt somebody and booking for a niche audience that somehow became so ravenous and that they want blood all the time and they want people's lives and they want people's souls, and they are so loud on Twitter that they don't even stay consistent with anything. They tell people that they loved it, and I really don't believe people who say that, who go on your tweets and respond with, I loved it, there was nothing wrong with it, it was edgy. Well, what happens if someone decided to do that to somebody because they don't know how to talk about their problems? They don't know how to talk to a therapist, and they decide to be like, oh, well, if Jon Moxley did it, I could do it too. Oh, if Hangman Adam Page did that, I could do it too. The imagery of telling people that it's okay that to do this, And most of the time in wrestling, it is supposed to be like, hey, you know that this is just acting, you know that they're not really there to hurt each other, you know that they are there to put on a show for us. That's what WWE and everybody else does. WWE, TNA, MLW, they do that. We are used to hardcore matches with tables, chairs, ladders, and we get it. They're going to be hurting in the morning, but they're not going in there with the intent to kill each other. They're not going in there with the intent to try to take someone's life, Jon Moxley, which should be addressed, but it's not going to be addressed because AEW was like, oh, we're not going to show the graphic footage of what happened to Danielson because we don't condone it. We don't have anything to do with that. But who booked it? Who talked about it? Who approved it? When Tony Khan said that he has 27 writers, and he confirmed this because some time ago there was an article that said he doesn't because he doesn't like writers, but for some reason now he wants writers and needs writers. And he said that everyone is coming to him with 100 different ideas and everyone is pitching this and pitching that. Whoa, did Jon Moxley pitch the fact that he was going to suffocate Daniel Bryan? And you just said, oh, that's a good idea. It doesn't matter how professional you are or how professionally you're trained. You are not trained in the wrestling schools to learn how to safely take a bag over your head and try not to suffocate. No one trains you for that. And no wrestler signs up to be suffocated with a potential going on to the afterlife because Jon Moxley wants to imitate whatever he watched over his break because Jon Moxley doesn't know how to come up with a character. Jon Moxley doesn't understand wrestling. Jon Moxley understands violence to fulfill something that he's missing, but he never knew how to create a character. And WWE was trying to help him create a character, but he just doesn't know how to create a character. And the Jon Moxley fans that go towards him and like celebrate him, are you celebrating this? Are you celebrating a man that could have potentially killed another man on live television on a pay-per-view? Even though you can watch it on your TV, so I call it like live television. But are you really celebrating a man that could have killed another man on professional wrestling? When we try our very, very best to make sure that the wrestling can be family friendly, the wrestling can have some uncomfortability, but good uncomfortability, but yet then Jon Moxley tries to kill one of his own co-workers in Daniel Bryan and it's celebrated and it's like it's wrestling. No, it's not wrestling. It is not. You don't do that to one of your brethren. You don't do that to somebody that you wake up in the morning, shake their hand and be like, I'm glad you're here. You don't do any of that stuff. That's crossing a line. That's crossing a boundary. And that's crossing Danielson's human rights. That's crossing his human rights to try and suffocate the man. The same thing with Swerve. You're crossing Swerve's human right. No wrestler signs up to do dangerous stunts like that. And it's not even a stunt because what happens if that needle had too much or whatever it was to sort of sedate Swerve and did something wrong to his body and stuff, whether or not it's true or that was the case, because there's a lot of insinuation with what happened with these clips in AEW All Out. There's a lot of insinuation and I don't really like that. First of all, I don't really like the fact that we have to talk about these issues because we really shouldn't be doing that in 2024. What's wrong with having a regular unsanctioned lights out cage match? Do you want to know what happened the last time AEW had an unsanctioned match? It is a classic. It is between Thunder Rosa and Britt Baker. That is the all-time classic for AEW for an unsanctioned lights out match. And those two women went to the limit and beyond. And they did not need no cinder blocks. They did not need no needles. They did not need no unprotected chair shots. They knew what they were doing because they had Cody Rhodes at the time. And they had other people that probably chimed in to be like, ladies, you could go all out, but just don't like cross any boundaries. But because it is Hangman and Swerve and this supposed blood feud that is very overhyped, that it's okay. It's okay to try and destroy your opponent to the point where they may not wake up the next day, or, have a needle and don't take accountability or responsibility. And the fact that you are representing AEW and Warner Brothers Discovery didn't cross your mind that this could have been a huge oversight, and no one said, hey, I don't think that's a good idea. I mean, Tony Khan lets the inmates run the asylum so bad that they have lost what it means to be a professional wrestler. They lost what it means to be wrestling. And this is not the alternative that we asked for in 2019. The vision is completely different. The vision is no longer change the world. And what are the EVPs doing? What is Kenny Omega doing? They're doing absolutely nothing. There is no consequences for this, because everybody on the internet wants to be like, you are bad for talking about it because I liked it and I this and I that. And I said it time and time again that the IWC accounts that you interact with 90% of the times, and then 95% of the times with the added dirt sheets, they don't care about the product. They don't care about AEW. They care about the access to AEW, but they don't care about AEW changing their ways for the better, because they see something and they're like, AEW good, WWE bad, so you must be a sheep and go with the trend and go with the crowd, rather than standing your ground and letting AEW know, hey, what happened to the original vision? What are we doing? Why are we crossing boundaries? Why are we putting people's lives in danger? And if you guys are not knee deep into Twitter like that, let me just catch you up to what people were actually saying on the Twitter timeline when they saw these clips of Danielson getting suffocated by Jon Moxley and the needle getting stabbed into Swerve and the unprotected chair shot. Most of them were saying, oh, what's next? We're going to introduce a gun? That's scary to read on the timeline, especially from mutuals and especially from other people that I don't really interact with. But that is scary to read that, oh, what's next? Guns? Please do not give them the idea. Don't do that. Don't give them the idea. It's 2024. Why can't AEW tell fascinating stories over the title belt? Why can't AEW connect with the crowd? Why is it always a small subsection of AEW fans that Tony Khan wants to appeal to? This is a guy that just plays in the sandbox and doesn't understand the world of professional wrestling. I want to pivot for a little bit and talk about TV and network and cable, because it seems like the IWC, even the selfish ones, are just quickly turning and being like, oh my God, when AEW goes to Fox, people are going to lose their mind. And even some people called for other people to no longer be here and go on to the Beyond or Heaven and stuff. And it's like, how dare you want someone to not be here anymore on Earth? I understand that in the internet day and age, in this world, that if you want to be a coward and not show your face and not show who you are and want to use an anime profile or a logo or something, not all logos, by the way, or a wrestler or whatever the case may be, that is not actually you, and you end up wanting to say that somebody should no longer be here on Earth, it is very easy to do that. And it's very sad that you would think that that would be the right thing to do on social media, just because you really don't believe what you say half the time. But it's very, very easy playing a villain online, and then people go to that tweet and they make that tweet amplified. And that's what I really want the internet wrestling community and everyone around the world to stop really doing that. Stop giving a voice to people that are cowards and don't show their face. Stop giving a voice to people who would just casually on the internet say the most heinous stuff. And you know that they're doing it to get a rise out of you and get a rise out of everybody else, because it is engagement farming. And no matter how many times that myself and others would say it, people still do it because misery loves company. There are other people on social media that would love to uplift other voices, that would love to make sure that wrestlers are safe, to make sure that wrestlers are here for another day to see, to soak in the sunshine. But no, voices that say horrendous stuff need to be uplifted for what? But that's not what I really want to pivot into, but it's sort of like it. I want to pivot into the fact that most TV networks renew their content way before late August, late September. The fact that AEW still has not, well, I should say the fact that Tony Khan has not put pen to paper in his own words. He said that during the AEW media scrum after AEW All Out. The fact that Tony Khan had to say that he has not put pen to paper for a new deal to renew AEW on Warner Brothers Discovery is really, really telling. But everybody on the internet wants you to think that they're going to get that Fox deal. They're not going to get that Fox deal. Did you see how much Fox was censoring WWE in its last days before it jumps over to the USA Network? Did you see how many times Fox Network decided to censor WWE? And you think that suffocating a man, stabbing a man with a needle, unprotected chair shots are not going to be regulated if they went to a Fox Network? They're going to stop that. Or they could use it for an agenda building, and you don't want that. You don't want AEW to be part of the agenda for whatever the government and the news wants you to believe and still be divided about. You don't want that. That's the flip side of it. But for some reason, the fans or the weird accounts that just want to say stuff for the sake of saying stuff, and even the dirt sheets too, because the dirt sheets want to be ahead of Tony Khan. Even though Tony Khan is the one that are in these meetings, in these rooms, the dirt sheets that tell you about these TV deals, they don't talk to nobody. They're not in the rooms. They don't really have the connections like that. They do the hearsay through the grapevine and make you believe with the utmost confidence, even though their confidence is kind of shaky, that they have these connections. They don't. But they want to be ahead of the curve just so that way if it does happen, they can say, see, I told you so. That's why you should pay me $5 because I know what I'm talking about. And I talk to the sources ahead of time of Tony Khan. That's not how that works, dude. You're just getting $5 from people because you want to be in the right, and you could be like, oh, these are my receipts. This is why I am the best at what I do, so pay me $5. Instead of actually making original wrestling content for your fans to actually give you the money that is worth it for your content that you put out there. I don't really think news is content unless you are doing social commentary, unless you're adding value, unless you're reacting to something that you have knowledge about and you can give more details and more value to that reaction, then yeah, that's worth it. But just reporting news after news after news of like, talks have been tentative, guys, but AEW is going to get that deal, or AEW is going to go to HBO Max. How many years have we been saying that? It's been forever. So no, I do not think that AEW is going to get this Fox deal. Do not believe what you read out there, folks. Don't believe the dirt sheets. Like I said, Tony Khan is the last person to have the last word because he's in the rooms. He's the one that has to put pen to paper. And by him saying in the AEW scrum that he has yet to put pen to paper basically tells you that these dirt sheets don't know shit and they get played like a fiddle, and then they want you to give them money, which is kind of sad. It really is. Because again, they want to be first without having the knowledge. None of them wants to do the hard work by trying to get into a network television and being like, hey, I would love to be an intern. Hey, I'm a credible journalist, even though some of them or most of them are not credible. But for the sake of this, if they said that I'm a credible journalist, I would like to learn the insides and the outsides of network television. You know, can I shadow you for a day? Can I be an intern? No, none of these guys want to do that. They don't want to do the hard work. They just want to say that, oh, it's intimate. It's coming. This AEW deal is coming. Now, if AEW does renew with Warner Brothers Discovery, it is going to be sort of shocking to me, because if I was on the network cable, I would be like, yo, we're not going to put that on TV. We're not going to have them do something outrageous on TV after what we saw on the pay-per-view. And the pay-per-view could be purchased by anyone and everyone for $50. So everyone and anyone that has access to the internet can pay for a pay-per-view, whether that is on Bleacher Report, on Triller, or even to illegally watch it, can see it. Kids can walk into the room and see it. Kids can talk about it on Twitter, because you know that minors are on Twitter. You know that minors are on Reddit. You know that minors are on Threads. You know that minors are on Instagram. You know that minors are on every single media platform there is, because who really pays for this stuff? Kids, by way of their parents or their credit card, their debit card, or if the kids end up having a job, they could pay it for themselves. So to say that AEW isn't for you and AEW isn't for kids, cable television, ratings, social media, and who consumes the most social media are kids, you guys are completely off base when you're like, oh, this isn't for kids. You're right. Wrestling is really not for kids, but if you tell the kids that wrestling is an extension of art, that wrestling is an extension of trying to find your voice, trying to find where you fit in, how to get over these obstacles, how to treat people, how to solve your problems in a right way, and let them know that sometimes violence isn't always the answer. Sometimes violence can be the answer, but you never try to overstep the boundary of taking away someone's human basic rights and treating them as if they are not human. That is what we saw on AEW All Out, that these two guys, Danielson and Swerve, were treated as not humans because their human basic rights got violated. And that should not be on a pay-per-view. That should not even be on TV. If they're going to show highlights, if someone's going to talk about it, if it gets picked up by the news, if anything happens going forward while AEW is still on the air and it violates human basic rights, that should not be there. By the way, you guys should know that cable television is the umbrella of like a Christian network, no matter what. That is why a lot of programming has changed. So that way some imagery, such as violating human rights by suffocating someone or stabbing them with a needle, or smoking scenes, or really extreme scenes in entertainment, have not been on television for the past maybe like 40 years. And I'm just throwing a number out there. And this is all bigger than just your wrestling bubble. This is bigger than that. Because if something like this pops up on cable television, that should be it for the program. There are a lot of programs that got cut because of ratings, and for some reason, Warner Brothers Discovery and TBS have been keeping AEW for I don't know why. Maybe they do want an alternative, but that was too much of an extreme alternative. And if you are able to do something like that on a pay-per-view, just imagine what they could do on cable television that could be extremely more worse. And then if they do take them off cable television, well, whose fault is that? That's going to be the Sickos' fault. That's going to be Tony Khan's fault. And not all the money in the world is going to save him to bring it back on, because, again, cable television at its core still has Christian values. And I think a lot of people forgot about that because we are in the day and age of streaming services. And on streaming services, you could get away with a lot of stuff, which brings me to my actual pivot point of how come we don't talk about GCW? GCW is mainly known for deathmatch wrestling. Yes, they may have the occasional regular wrestling and they can showcase the talent, but they get overshadowed by being known as a deathmatch promotion. The same thing with CZW, Combat Zone Wrestling. Combat Zone Wrestling is hardcore. It's also deathmatch. We had ECW that I had mentioned earlier. ECW did a lot of horrendous stuff. They were on public access TV, but they grew a fandom, which I can appreciate. And for most of the time, they kept it strong until ECW needed help because they never got that TV deal because that stuff would not fly. The same thing with GCW. GCW is friends with WWE. Every time that Brett is outside and he sees Stephanie McMahon, they take a picture and Brett posts that picture with Stephanie McMahon. He is friends / acquaintances with WWE, and you would think that maybe WWE may want to help them out. I don't know, but I'm just saying that if you are buddy with WWE, if you're buddy with Stephanie McMahon, why haven't you asked how to get a TV deal? Why haven't you asked how to get GCW on cable television so that could be another competitor in the ratings game that we currently have between WWE, AEW, TNA, and I believe that's it. Even though TNA is on Access TV, but they still are in this conversation. But it brings up the question of the stuff of GCW and the deathmatch stuff that makes people feel uncomfortable. Have you, the IWC selfish accounts that say that this is the alternative we need, did you ever say that about GCW? Did you ever advocate for GCW to get on cable television rather than GCW to continue to be on Triller TV and anywhere else? And by the way, they only do once a month kind of shows, which is an ordinary indie promotion for the frequency of how many shows they have. Have you guys ever advocated for them? No. But want to say that AEW is the alternative and this is what you've been asking for all along. No, it wasn't. You were not asking for this. GCW managed to get a little bit of momentum and everybody was riding that wave and everybody was like, GCW, yeah, this is awesome. You can have GCW, but AEW on cable television should not be doing the same stuff that they want to do in terms of hardcore and making people feel uncomfortable in a bad setting, because that is not representative of Warner Brothers Discovery, TBS. When you go on a network, you have to abide by their rules. You have to abide by their regulations. You have to abide by their strictness. And GCW can't do it. CZW can't do it. ECW didn't do it. So I just want someone to make it make sense. How after all these years, 5 years in the making, all of a sudden a small subsection on the IWC, which are just accounts. It's not even Tony Khan, because Tony Khan already labeled you guys as the Sickos and you guys will follow to the T like sheep, whatever Tony Khan says. But I don't understand how we allowed the small section on the internet in the IWC to speak for everyone, because you don't speak for everyone and I don't speak for everyone. But for the most part, people can agree and see the perspective of what I bring to the podcast episode. But for some reason, you want to speak for everybody and say that this is the alternative that you always wanted, not us. You wanted it because for some reason you're not really fulfilled in your life, and I don't understand. So I don't understand how this is the alternative you wanted, but wouldn't support GCW, and GCW does the same thing with their death matches. Is it because you know that on cable television they won't be able to show it, but on the internet it's okay to hide behind a profile pic and just be like, yeah, this is the alternative we wanted. We always wanted this. It's not for you. This is the same kind of pushback that video games are currently getting in the current landscape of things. And this is why I say that imagery is important in wrestling and media and entertainment, because for some reason people will be like, yay, that's wrestling. And then other people will be like, no, that's not wrestling. That's very horrendous and disgusting, and that crosses a line. Do you not have any empathy or compassion for a human being, another human being in the professional wrestling world? We've lost so many professional wrestlers at such a young age due to CTE, due to drug overdose, due to negligence. And then all of a sudden you're cheering what you saw on AEW, which is very, very telling. And it's also very, very telling to see my mutuals go to other people's tweets and tell them to stop being a pussy. What is wrong with you? They have as much right as you do to say that they don't like something, or to say that this is horrendous, this is disgusting. Me, I'm taking it a step further by making a podcast episode and say that human rights were violated, because it was. How do you suffocate a man on pay-per-view? What happens if Jon Moxley does that shit again on AEW television? Is anyone going to call out Jon Moxley for it? I really do think that Jon Moxley is the mini problem with this, and he's not going to see it. He's not going to understand it, because he wants to do what he wants to do, and that's dangerous. And a cable network television provider such as Warner Brothers Discovery, TBS, should be very, very concerned, because I am concerned. That is the only reason why I'm bringing it up. I'm not even looking at this from a pure wrestling point of view, because a pure wrestling point of view would be like, all right, guys, these two wrestlers are doing a collar and elbow tie up to see who's the strongest. And then when they break, one of them did a wrist lock, and then the guy tries to get out of the wrist lock and sweeps his leg under, tries to go for the pin and end the match early because he might want to go home. I'm not looking at these clips as a wrestling thing, because it's not a wrestling thing. The thing I just previously said, that's me looking at something in a competitive way, because again, professional wrestling is competitive, and you have to understand that you are representing a network, you are representing AEW, and there is a really huge contrast between how AEW wrestlers act versus how WWE wrestlers act. And it's kind of sad that nobody in that locker room in AEW went up to Jon Moxley and be like, bro, that's not cool. I do not care if you don't like Danielson. I do not care if it's a storyline or not a storyline. You just violated Danielson's human right because you wanted to try and take his life, even if that wasn't the intent, but it was there. It was the fact that people can watch this and see this imagery and draw conclusions that this is what was happening. See, do you see how dangerous that is when they see specific imagery and then it gets into their mind that this is either okay, that this is not a storyline, because why would you want to try to suffocate somebody? Why would you want to try to stab somebody with a needle? Why would you want to end their life and use a steel chair unprotected, and you can't gimmick the chair? Please stop saying that you can gimmick a chair. If you have not stepped into a wrestling ring, and if you have not trained in a wrestling ring, stop talking. Do not say to somebody that it's a gimmick chair. There is no such thing as a gimmick chair. Do you see how all the dirt sheets and all the IWC accounts that are selfish have to do damage control, while Tony Khan can go home, sleep at night, and Tony Khan don't have to take responsibility or accountability because he never knew what that was, because all his life he has been given the pass and the green to go and just does what he does. But everybody on the internet has to play damage control for AEW. But nobody does damage control for WWE. Everybody is like, WWE is bad, AEW is good. When AEW, again, violated human rights. Again, put someone's life in danger. A clear chair shot like that to Swerve could have seriously damaged his brain and caused anything. Because we, at the end of the day, And for me to be honest, we are fragile human beings and we should be taking care of each other inside and outside the ring. There's a reason why a lot of the old wrestlers are like, please stop doing this. Please stop doing this. But no, fans want to be like, damage control. You cannot tell us that they cannot do this anymore. You have no power. I'm not listening to you because you are authority or whatever. It's not about authority. It's about doing what's right for the human person in the ring. They are a human person. And if you do not see them as a human person and you want to go online and call somebody on Twitter a pussy because they want to stand up for what's right, then that is wrong. And you are quite possibly contributing to the problem that AEW has, because AEW believes that all publicity is good publicity. AEW believes that all drama is good drama. AEW believes that if you are talking about them, that it is a good thing, and that is not. Because then you have someone like me to bring up these issues and basically try to drive home that this is a human rights violation to both men that did not need that for some odd reason. And again, I do not care if this was an unsanctioned match. I do not care. That does not mean you try to take someone's life. That does not mean that you try to incapacitate somebody to the point of simulating to drug them and hit them over the head with a chair. Because guess what? When someone is in a drug-like state, they have no control over their body. And it does not matter if Swerve was acting, if Swerve was selling. That's not the point here. The point is the imagery. Someone got stabbed with a needle. It looked like Hangman Adam Page injected something. So I'm going off of what I see. I'm going off of the observation. It does not matter if he was selling. That's not the point in this. The point is that a human being that ends up getting drugged has no control over their body. And that is sad because, you know, your body, your choice, right? Like, why would someone take away your right to have control and autonomy over your body, right? So essentially, Swerve over here has no control over his body, so he cannot correctly defend himself against an unprotected chair shot. And here comes the chair shot. So that means that you would have this person defenseless for selfish reasons because you don't know how to tell a story and you don't know how to direct a unsanctioned lights out cage match that did not need to violate Swerve's human rights and violate Swerve's autonomy because you wanted to, I don't know, whatever you gave him to make it seem like he was sedated and not in control. And when you're not in control and your body is like that and you get hit full force in the head, anything could have happened into his body because he could not defend himself. And we always say that you need to defend yourself in professional wrestling. For some odd reason, that got thrown out the window and no one's talking about it because they want to be the ones to be like, yeah, this is what we wanted. What happens if something bad happened on the pay-per-view? And then what? What's going to happen? What happens when it eventually comes out that something bad happened and we can't turn back time? Because we honestly cannot turn back time to all the wrestlers that have passed on from drugs, CTE, anything that's reckless. Like, we cannot turn back time. So this podcast episode is to really, really, really tell you the perspective that it is wrong. I will stand by it. And we always say that there are reasons why AEW doesn't have sponsorships, which, you know what? I'll quickly talk about the sponsorships because you guys need to know the difference about sponsorships. And if you are not a content creator or a streamer, take some notes because you need to learn this. When we talk about sponsors in the professional wrestling world, we're talking about sponsors like what WWE gets. And I'm not talking about Prime. The two examples that come to mind are Wingstop and I believe it was Cinnamon Toast Crunch that had sponsored professional wrestling matches. So that means that Wingstop contacted WWE and was like, hey, WWE, what are your prices for sponsorships? Because I want to sponsor a match. WWE is like, here are the numbers. Wingstop is like, okay, cool. Those numbers work within our budget. Here goes the money. They send the money over. They get all the logos for Wingstop. And they even throw in a commercial with Rey Mysterio and Braun Strowman, and they're eating Wingstop. And you know what that tells you, the customer that's watching WWE, whether you're there live or you're at home sitting on the couch? That tells you, hey, I know you're hungry, viewer. Why don't you go pick up some wings from Wingstop? Because everybody loves wings. Who doesn't love wings? And the wings are super flavorful, and you could put whatever sauce you want on the wings. And I know you want wings. And guess what happens? You, as the consumer, go out or order Wingstop, and Wingstop comes to your place and you start eating. The same logic applies to Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Cinnamon Toast Crunch is like, hey, WWE, what are your budget plans and how can we get on this? And WWE is like, it's X amount of money for this. Cinnamon Toast Crunch is awesome. And Cinnamon Toast Crunch probably, I believe, sponsored the match that had like New Day in it, so that makes more sense. And you watching it, you're like, hey, I'm fans of New Day and I'm kind of feeling like I want some Cinnamon Toast Crunch, and you go out and buy Cinnamon Toast Crunch. So those type of sponsorships is where the marketing team for both Wingstop and Cinnamon Toast Crunch has this budget, and they know how many eyes that WWE gets on them every single day, every single year, and they want to be a part of that. So they look at that and they know that they're going to get a return on investment, ROI, from people buying Cinnamon Toast Crunch from WWE. Like a WWE fan will go buy Cinnamon Toast Crunch. So they know they're going to make their money back. So that is a sponsorship. Now, fans, or so-called fans, were telling me they have DraftKings on the turnbuckles. DraftKings sponsors everyone. Mansoor, Kevin Hart, Ash by Elegance, they are sponsored by DraftKings. And you know how those sponsorships go? It's very similar to my sponsorship with Uno. Basically, what happens is that DraftKings is an affiliate type of sponsorship where they know that they're going to get everybody and anyone, first of all, when it comes to DraftKings, because DraftKings is a gambling site, which, by the way, if you have an addiction to gambling, please make sure to go get help and gamble responsible. But they know that people are going to be on there regardless. So what they do is that they set up an affiliate link with people that have a bigger platform to get more people onto the site, because that's how money generates and that's how money ends up going through the system for DraftKings. But DraftKings is not really a sponsorship. They're not calling up AEW to be like, hey, we want to sponsor. No, they just happen to be there because I'm guessing Mansoor is part of AEW now, so they just put it there. Or AEW is just like, hey, let's do affiliate links. If you guys ever want to know the difference between actual sponsorships and affiliate sponsorships, is that for an affiliate link, the streamer, the person who has it, for example, me with Uno and previously Monopoly and previously Fortnite and previously HelloFresh, I would definitely tell you guys, especially for Uno, that if you click my link below and download the game using my link, you guys can play Uno with me online, and we could reach up to level 10 and smash these goals. And if you use my link with a special code, you get all these benefits, and it helps me out directly as a streamer. And that is amazing, because if you ever wanted to know how to help out a streamer, content creator directly, it's by helping them by clicking on their sponsorships, clicking on their affiliate links. And if you do so, the link is down in the description below. Let's play some Uno. Let's get to level 10. I know we could do it together as a community, and that helps me out directly and greatly as a content creator. And thank you so, so much. Don't forget to download the game via my link. So when you click on that link, it knows you clicked on that link. It knows that you downloaded the game. And when you reach level 10, it will tell me and it will tell the program, and you have helped the streamer get the affiliate portion, the commission from that link. That is what affiliate sponsorship does. DraftKings is affiliate sponsorship because anybody could go grab an affiliate link and be like, hey, we're affiliate. The same way that if you ever wanted to with WWE Shop, you can get an affiliate link that you post on social media, on your blog, on your content, and be like, hey guys, I know that WWE is hot right now and I'm enjoying WWE and I hope that you're enjoying WWE too. Like, if you want, you could go pick up that Rhea Ripley shirt that just dropped, and if you use my link, you could get 15% off. So please go do so. It helps out the channel. It helps me out directly. So please go click that affiliate link down in the description below and go shop on WWE, and you get 15% off or whatever you get, especially that Rhea Ripley shirt. People have done that. Content creators have done that. We call it a sponsorship, even though it's an affiliate sponsorship, and we feel good about it because that's an extra source of income that we all need as content creators, because let's face it, Twitch is not really paying as much and everything is half, and we get paid by the pennies if we're not a huge streamer with a lot of fans donating and such. That's just the reality of it. But to come into my mentions and to put on as a response that AEW does have sponsors. Oh, look at that. Is DraftKings. Oh, look at that. Will Ospreay got sponsored by Assassin's Creed Shadows. Those are not sponsorship, guys. Those are just collaborations. And DraftKings has WWE as well sometimes, and WWE has a bigger platform. Like I said, DraftKings affiliate sponsors everyone. Not us, though. That's okay. But DraftKings does that with everyone. But to say that that's their sponsor, no. Look what happened with the partnership with Woo Energy from Ric Flair. That stopped because they realized that they were losing money. DraftKings doesn't lose money if they are going to be an affiliate sponsorship with multiple companies. DraftKings is not only with AEW, but DraftKings is also with WWE, and DraftKings is also with TNA by way of Ash by Elegance. That's just how it is. So next time, just do research about the differences between sponsorships and affiliate sponsorships. Because I'm a content creator and streamer, I have to understand what these are, and I have to rightfully present to my community which ones we're going to be talking about. Like Uno. If you guys like playing Uno on your phone, you guys could definitely go download my link today into the description. So there's that. I am going to close with this. Wrestling shouldn't cross boundaries, such as this imagery of having a man being suffocated, having a man getting stabbed with a needle to simulate maybe he got drugged. We still don't know. With an unprotected chair shot that comes next. Wrestling should not be crossing these kind of violation to a person, to a human right that you have to be living in this world. It does not matter if it is apparently theater. It does not matter if it is selling. You are crossing a line in professional wrestling. And the last times in the world of professional wrestling, something that we created. So back in the day of professional wrestling, when something was crossed, when a line was crossed, people talked about it. People brought their voices up and made it aware that this is not right and it needs to change. There has not been something so controversial in the good past some odd years. There's no timestamp in my mind, but the bigger picture, you guys have to remember, we're talking about the bigger picture here, is that when something as controversial came into wrestling, it was never done again. Wrestling kept moving forward rather than going backwards for the sake of shock value, because AEW cannot create stories. AEW wrestlers cannot create stories, and it is very evident, and I will stand on that. There are only a few that I could count on my hand that are actual good stories, but they're not in recent memory, except for CM Punk before CM Punk went to WWE. CM Punk versus MJF was a really good story. MJF versus Cody Rhodes. And I didn't even like Cody Rhodes getting whipped like he did 10 times. I didn't like that either, and I think I probably talked about it. My point is, and in closing, wrestling is not supposed to push unethical, unthinkable violence onto you in 2024. Now, if this was in the 90s and we didn't know any better, okay, we'll have a different perspective. We'll have a different thought pattern. But because we know what we know, we shouldn't be doing this. We should be going forward. We should be creating stories, connecting with the fans. So that way the arenas that Tony Khan wants to book that are 15,000 plus can actually sell out. But everybody in AEW is so content on wanting to do their own selfish thing that they forget about it's a team effort. They forget about that it's an effort that requires fans to come, because if not, just put it on YouTube. Just do AEW Dark, and I don't remember the other one, but just do that if you're not in the business of actually creating money and actually creating revenue and having fans come back to every single town that you go to, that single loop that AEW does. So again, I close out with this, that you can have uncomfortability in professional wrestling. You just got to be smart about it, because then it is uncomfortable, but it's a good uncomfortable, and you want to see what happens next week on the show. You don't want to tune out because you might think that things are going to get escalated and then somebody is not going to come back. Like, you don't want fans to think that. You don't want fans to cower and be like, hey, I don't want to see any traumatic stuff. As professional wrestlers, we are supposed to move forward. As companies, we are supposed to move forward. As storytellers, we are supposed to move forward and not use shock value for the sake of shock value. It does not matter if a label that is unsanctioned gets smacked onto what you're doing to make it right, to give it a pass. It does not work that way, because if we're told that wrestling is staged, and that there's a booker, and that you guys had to sign a contract, and we know that it is theater, we know that we're playing a role, we know that it is just cartoons, we know that it's not real, it's entertainment, but to do some unspeakable things and to get a pass for it, no, that's not how that works. You can't say that this is staged and fake and we sign a contract and we're playing characters, and then when you want to simulate imagery of actually destroying a defenseless man, you want to pass for that. It doesn't work that way. It's not both ways. We cannot suspend our disbelief when we see a defenseless man get taken out by a chair shot, previously followed by a stab in the needle, and maybe get injected with something. We don't know. But do you see how coming to those conclusions is really a bad idea? Or even seeing a man suffocate? Who really signs up for this? No one signs up for this. And like I said, you cannot have your cake and eat it too. If you want to do professional wrestling, do professional wrestling the right way, which is a competition between both men, both women, mixed tag. It doesn't matter. It is a competition. Stop trying to one-up each other and trying to kill each other in the name of professional wrestling and slap it on with, oh, it's unsanctioned. Oh, we don't condone this, but it happened anyway because somebody approved it. Wrestling gets approved by the boss, and the boss is not taking any type of accountability because AEW fans want to give everybody the pass in AEW and want to claim it for their own because it is of selfish reasons. And that is completely wrong. So for the sake of this podcast episode is to bring awareness that we had two defenseless men. We had two things that should have never been shown on pay-per-view. It does not matter. It does not get a pass. It needs to be talked about, and moving forward, that does not need to happen. I don't care if any of the wrestlers get upset at this, because I'm looking out for you. If your boss, Tony Khan, does not want to look out for your safety, I will look out for your safety because I care about the wrestlers that come up in the business. I care about this sport. I care about the wrestler waking up the next day and getting some sunshine and getting to see their family and getting to hug their family. But no, selfish internet wrestling community accounts want to do damage control and want to tell other people that they're wrong when they want to see their wrestler wake up in the morning by being okay and not having to go to the doctor if something is wrong or having to be rushed to the hospital. We don't want to hear any of those stories. So why do we have to start now? Isn't 2024 the year and beyond for having a much higher tolerance and empathy when it comes to professional wrestling and making sure that these wrestlers stay around forever, so that way when we're all old together, we could be like, yo, you remember 20 years ago, you were this awesome wrestler and you had this awesome feud, and we could have them on a discussion panel and a debate and talk about how tag team wrestling worked in 2024 and beyond and all this kind of stuff. Don't you want them around to talk about that kind of stuff? Don't you want them around to tell their stories? Don't you want them around to usher in a new era of professional wrestlers? Well, if you do, you would think that talking about these issues and how unethical they are and how unthinkable they are, that would be a good thing for AEW to smarten up, to wisen up. But when you're run by somebody that wants to play in the sandbox and don't care if anyone gets hurt, that's really, really telling. When you work for someone that only wants 90s wrestlers and don't care really about the future of wrestling and don't really take the reins of his own company, that this is a dream come true for him, it's very, 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 very telling. And you might think that I'm sensitive, that I'm soft, or whatever the case may be, but when I truly love something like this and see things that can be potential dangers and harms and concerns, yeah, I'm going to talk about it. You may not like it, and that's totally okay. I'm not asking you to like this as I dislike it or however you want to phrase it, but I'm not telling you to think like me. I'm just telling you to have an open mind, look at the bigger picture, and see that this imagery causes a lot of different thinking amongst people, especially when people have not been in the right state of mind in the past 4 to 5 years. And you wonder why crime is high. You wonder why a lot of people are just not having it and they're fed up. And then all of a sudden it's like, yay, let's cheer what AEW has done. That doesn't make no sense to me. We should be helping people to the best of our ability and trying to have people understand that this is wrong and that going forward, this should not happen at all. No one should get suffocated. No one should get stabbed with a needle and simulate getting drugged and then getting hit on top of the head with an unprotected chair shot. That should not be the way of wrestling. That is not the way of wrestling, and I will stand on it because wrestling is a competition, like I said. I know I'm going to keep repeating myself, but I just need people to understand that this is bigger than pro wrestling. It's bigger than two people play fighting, like everyone says. Everyone wants to be part of professional wrestling, and when I say everyone, I mean the fans. They want to be a part of professional wrestling and cheer on professional wrestling, but when you bring truth to light, they want to remind you that it's fake. It's a show. It's not real. It's not serious. But at the same time, want to be so part, like really be in there with the wrestlers and be marks and get high fives and get follows and become fangirls and fanboys. But will tell you, the one that's bringing up the issue, that it's not that serious, that it's fake fighting and all this kind of stuff. You know, I just need people to make it make sense. Other than that, ladies and gentlemen, I will stand firm on this until something changes. And then, of course, there'll be another podcast about it. But for the time being, everyone is doing damage control. All the internet wrestling community accounts switched their tune as soon as SmackDown got off of Fox and was like, hey guys, let's not worry about this unthinkable violence. Let's talk about how AEW might go to Fox. You see the switch up? The switch up is super, super crazy. All right, ladies and gentlemen, again, you don't have to agree with me or disagree with me. I'm just bringing this to everyone's attention because it is the right thing to do. And this is what is called for, like, empathy and compassion, and just talk about how unethical it was and to look at the bigger picture. Again, if you don't agree, that's totally fine. You can let me know down in the comments below, whether that is on YouTube, on Substack, or even comment on Spotify. But it needs to be talked about because no one's talking about it, because I don't know why. Anyway, I love this business and I love you guys. And by the way, you have been listening to an episode of the Squared Circle podcast. I am your host, Marie Shadows, and make sure to follow me on youtube.com/Squared Circle podcast. Follow me on Twitter. Thank you again for making me Twitter famous at Marie_Shadows. You can definitely like and subscribe and comment and share it out. You could also sign up to marieshadows.substack.com. And yes, I'll let you guys know right now that I am creating a Discord. Just give me some time. We'll chill in there. It'll be a lot more better than being on Twitter. And then I can react to whatever you guys want me to react to in the wrestling world. But I'm just letting you guys know that early. Again, thank you for listening to this podcast episode talking about the dangers and the imagery of what we saw at the ending of AEW All Out 2024. It is ridiculous that we have to have this conversation in 2024 for the sake of having a conversation, bringing up the issue, because nobody knows how to tell stories and or connect with the fans. You cannot keep booking for the Sickos because the Sickos don't care about the wrestlers. The Sickos don't care about the company. The Sickos care about themselves only through and through. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'll see you guys on the next one.